Before we begin this suspenseful, heartwarming story, please tell us in the comment box where you're watching from. We love to hear from you. Doris John sat on the edge of her creaky bed, staring at the dim ceiling light that flickered like it might go out at any second. The apartment was silent, except for the sound of the wind sneaking through a cracked window. The walls were stained, the carpet worn thin, and the air smelled faintly of cold toast and cheap detergent. She hugged herself. Her coat was thin, too thin for the freezing night. Her slippers had holes, the fridge had nothing but a bottle of milk about to expire, and a leftover piece of bread wrapped in foil. The rent was overdue by 2 weeks. Her electricity bill lay unopened on the kitchen counter. She couldn't bear to look at it, but what broke her more than anything was the sound of her little sister Emma coughing in the next room. Emma was only 10, sweet, bright, brave, diagnosed with a heart condition that required surgery, a surgery Doris could never afford. They said it would cost over $70,000. Doris couldn't even scrape together 70. She worked 2 jobs. Well, until this morning. Her manager at the diner let her go. Said business was slow, said she smiled too little, as if smiling could fix her life. She picked up a photo frame on her nightstand. It was cracked at the corner. In the picture, she and Emma were smiling wide in a field of sunflowers. That was taken before their parents died, before the world turned cold. Her phone buzzed. She blinked. A call. From a private number. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Something deep inside told her. This call was not normal. She answered. Hello? Her voice was tired, soft. There was a pause, then a man spoke. His voice was deep, calm, like velvet, but with a strange sadness wrapped around it. Miss John, he said, I apologize for the hour. I need a favor. She frowned. Who is this? I'm not calling to harm you, he replied. Please, listen. I'll pay you $1 million. She sat up straight. What? 1 million, he repeated, to spend one night with me. Just one night. No strings, no questions, just dinner, just company. Her heart started pounding. Is this a joke? She asked, her voice trembling. No joke, he said. You're probably wondering why you. She didn't respond. I saw you, he continued. You helped an old man outside a coffee shop 2 weeks ago. He dropped his bags. People walked past him. You didn't. You smiled. You helped. You stayed until he caught his breath. Doris felt her breath catch. She barely remembered that day. She was late for work. Her shoes were soaked. But she did stop to help that man. You followed no cameras, the voice said. You weren't pretending. You were real. That's rare in my world. She stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the snow gathering on the fire escape. Who are you? She whispered. Noah Henry, he said simply. Her jaw dropped. Everyone in the city had heard that name. Noah Henry, billionaire, heir to the Henry fortune, owner of half the skyline, rich, powerful, and mysterious. No social media, no public appearances. The world knew his name, but not his face. You're serious? Yes. Doris looked at Emma's door. Another cough, softer this time, weaker. She bit her lip. Tears filled her eyes. She had no one to ask for help, no family, no friends with money. She'd been applying for aid, for loans, for miracles. Maybe this call was one, but still, she asked, what exactly do you want from me? Dinner, he said. A walk in my garden, maybe a story or two. Nothing more. She didn't speak. I won't touch you, he added gently. I don't want your body. I want your presence. Someone honest. Someone human. Her fingers shook as she held the phone. And if I say yes? A car will pick you up tomorrow night. You'll be returned safely. You will never hear from me again, unless you choose to. Doris closed her eyes. Could she do this? Spend a night with a man she didn't know? What would he really want? Could she trust him? But then, Emma's pale face flashed in her mind. Her little sister's smile, her dreams of becoming a writer, her soft voice saying, Dory, am I going to get better? Yes, Doris had no choice. She needed the money, but not for herself, for Emma, to save a life. I'll come, she whispered. Tomorrow. There was a pause, then Noah said softly, "Thank you." The call ended. She sat down slowly, her hands still shaking. One night, one man, $1 million. Her chest felt tight, like her heart was walking a wire between fear and hope. What kind of man offers $1 million for a stranger's company? And what would happen inside that mansion? She couldn't sleep that night, and she had no idea that this decision wouldn't just save Emma's life. It would change her own, forever. The next evening, just before sunset, a sleek black car pulled up in front of Doris's apartment. It looked out of place on her crumbling street, the paint too perfect, the engine too quiet, the windows too dark. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, their eyes wide with curiosity. Doris stepped outside slowly. Her hands were cold, though she wore gloves. Her dress was plain, black cotton, borrowed shoes, and a coat that barely kept the wind out. Her hair was tied in a simple knot. She had no makeup on. She had nothing to prove. She clutched her small purse like a shield. The driver nodded silently and opened the door. Inside, the car was warm. Soft lights. Classical music played faintly. She sat stiffly, unsure if she should speak, but the driver said nothing. He only drove. As the city disappeared behind them, trees began to line the road. Snow clung to the branches and the sky darkened to a velvet purple. Her heart thudded in her chest. What am I doing, she thought. What if this is a mistake? What if I never come back? But then she remembered Emma, alone in her bed, counting on her, and she whispered to herself, "You can do this, Doris." After nearly an hour, the car slowed. Giant iron gates appeared in the distance. They opened without a sound, and the car drove through. Her breath caught in her throat. The estate was unlike anything she had imagined. It wasn't just big, it was massive, yet quiet, elegant, timeless. The mansion stood tall in the middle of perfect gardens dusted with snow. Lights glowed softly from behind arched windows. The fountain at the entrance sparkled under the moonlight. And then she saw him. Noah Henry stood at the grand doorway. He was taller than she remembered from pictures, if you could call those blurry tabloid shots pictures. His shoulders were broad beneath a gray tailored suit. His posture was confident, but his face was not what she expected. There were no arrogant lines, no cold expression, just a pair of blue eyes that looked like they had seen too much. Eyes that were beautiful and broken. As she stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the stone steps, he walked toward her slowly. "You're nervous," he said softly, almost shyly. She hesitated. "Yes." He paused. "Me too," he whispered. That surprised her. She glanced around. "Where is everyone?" "No staff tonight," he said. "No one else. Just us." Her heart beat faster. Was that good or bad? He didn't touch her. He simply opened the tall door and stepped aside to let her in. The inside of the mansion was warm but silent. A fire burned gently in the massive fireplace. Chandeliers sparkled above, but the rooms weren't crowded with gold or crystal. It was elegant, yes, but lonely. There were no family photos, no laughter, just air that felt still and sad. "Welcome," he said. She gave him a small nod. "Thank you." Dinner wasn't in a giant hall like she expected. Instead, it was outside. He led her through glass doors onto a private balcony. There was a small table for two, a warm canopy above, heated lamps. Candles flickered gently as snow drifted down around them. She gasped softly. "It's beautiful." "I thought you'd like it," he said, and for a moment he looked proud. He served the food himself. No waiters, no champagne, just roast chicken, vegetables, and a little apple pie. As they ate, he didn't ask her about her body. He didn't try to impress her with money or brag about anything. Instead, he asked, "What made you smile as a child?" She blinked. "Excuse me? Was it music? Books? A pet? I want to know what made you happy." She was caught off guard. Her fingers trembled around the fork. She told him about her childhood, about picking wildflowers, about singing with her mom in the kitchen, about losing her parents in a car crash when she was 16, about how she became Emma's guardian before she even learned how to pay bills. He didn't interrupt. Not once. He listened like every word mattered. When she talked about Emma's condition, about the pain of watching her little sister grow weaker every day, her voice cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away, but they fell. Noah stood. She flinched, unsure what he'd do, but he didn't come toward her. Instead, he walked to the stone fountain at the edge of the balcony. The water flowed gently despite the cold. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking up at the stars. Then he said, "You don't belong in pain." His voice was soft, yet full of something powerful. "Not someone like you." Doris wiped her cheeks. "Why do you say that?" He turned his head slightly, not quite facing her. "Because you're gentle, even when life hasn't been." She rose and walked slowly toward him. "Why are you really doing this, Noah?" He looked at her now. Really looked. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were glassy. "Because I was born into money, but never knew love, not even kindness. I grew up in halls of gold, but I was starving for something real." Her breath caught. "I wanted to see if it was still out there," he said, "if kindness still existed." He paused, then added with a quiet voice, "I saw it in you." For a long moment they said nothing. Just the sound of the fountain and the wind brushing against the canopy. And then she said, "I don't know what you're looking for, Noah, but I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to survive." His reply was immediate. "Exactly. And that's what makes you more real than anyone I've ever met." He turned away again and whispered, "You don't even know what you've already healed in me." Doris stood still, her heart pounding, not in fear this time, but in something dangerously close to awe. And in that moment, under a sky full of stars, a billionaire and a girl from nowhere stood side by side, in silence. And something unspoken began to bloom between them. Not lust, not a transaction, but something raw, something like the beginning of love. Morning came gently. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the heavy curtains of the guest room where Doris had stayed. The sheets were silk, the bed too soft, and the silence almost sacred. Yet she hadn't slept much. Not because she was afraid, but because her mind kept replaying everything that happened. No kisses, no expectations, just words, just kindness. Just a man who looked powerful to the world, yet lonely to the core. Doris sat up, brushing her hair behind her ears. Her simple dress lay folded on the chair beside her. There was no mirror in the room, and maybe that was intentional. Maybe this house was never meant for vanity. She looked around again. No pictures, no signs of a family, just clean, cold walls and windows covered with heavy velvet. A gentle knock came at the door. "Come in," she said softly. Noah entered. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a plain white shirt and soft gray slacks. His hair was a little messy, like he hadn't slept either. But his eyes, they looked calmer than last night. Yet something flickered behind them. Uncertainty, hope, fear. He held out a small cream-colored envelope. "Here," he said. Doris looked at it. She didn't reach for it right away. "What's this?" He smiled a little. 1 million. Like I promised, her breath caught. It looked so small in his hand, so harmless. But she knew what it meant. 100 hospital bills. Emma's life saved. A fresh start. She reached out slowly and took it. The paper was thick, expensive. She didn't open it. "I don't want your money," she whispered, surprising even herself. He blinked. "It's not about the money?" She looked up, her voice stronger now. "Then what is it?" He hesitated. "It's about giving you what the world denied you." Her throat tightened. "Noah, I'll take it," she said finally, placing the envelope on the nearby table. "But only for Emma, not for me." He looked at her like she just shattered every wall he had built. She wasn't greedy. She wasn't acting. She wasn't pretending. She was exactly what he hoped she'd be. "Then," he said, stepping closer, his voice lower now, unsure but filled with something real. "Stay." She frowned slightly. "Stay?" He nodded, eyes never leaving hers. "Not for the money. Stay because I need someone real. And I think I'm falling for you." Her heart stopped for a second. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. She came here for a night, for Emma, for survival, not for love. She took a step back, her pulse racing. Noah, this was one night. That's what we said. I know, he said gently, closing the space again. But one night made me feel more than I have in years. She shook her head slowly. You don't know me. I know enough, he said. I know your silence, your honesty. I know the way your hands shook when you talked about your sister and how you still smiled through your tears. She looked away. You don't want me, she whispered. He tilted his head, confused. Why would you say that? Because I'm not your world, she said. I don't belong in mansions or black cars. I belong on buses. I belong in waiting rooms, begging for help. I don't fit in here. Noah's face softened. That's exactly why I need you. She looked up, confused. I've had everything, he said, voice trembling just slightly. Cars, companies, power, and I've never felt so empty. But last night, when you cried, when you laughed, when you told me about the song your mother used to hum, I felt alive again. She swallowed hard, her chest aching. He took a slow breath. So I'm not offering money this time. Her brows drew together. What do you mean? He looked her straight in the eyes. I'm asking you to come back. Tomorrow. No money. No deals. Just you. Doris's breath caught. The room felt too quiet. The air too thick. She started. He held up a hand gently. You don't have to say anything now. Just think about it. Come back if your heart tells you to. Her eyes filled with tears again, but she blinked them away. I'm not used to people being kind for no reason. He gave a small smile. Then let me be the first. They stood there for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Quiet, hesitant. She turned and picked up the envelope, again holding it tightly to her chest. For Emma, she reminded herself aloud, but her voice cracked slightly. And as she walked out of the mansion, past the fountain, through the iron gates, she didn't feel like the same girl who had arrived the night before. Something in her had shifted. Something in him had broken open, and neither of them would ever be the same again. The first time Doris returned, it was raining. Not heavy rain, just the kind that made everything quieter. She stood outside the iron gates in a simple beige coat, her hands tucked into her sleeves, nervous all over again. She had told herself it was just to thank him again, just to make sure he knew the money went straight to the hospital, just to say goodbye maybe. But the moment the gates opened, her heart betrayed her. Noah was already waiting on the front steps, dressed simply, holding a black umbrella. I didn't know if you'd come back, he said. I didn't know either, she whispered. He didn't hug her. He didn't kiss her. He just stepped aside and held the umbrella over her head as they walked back into the house. That day he didn't show her gold or diamonds. He showed her a room made of glass, his greenhouse. It sat behind the mansion, hidden from the front. Inside, tiny trees stretched toward the ceiling. Flowers bloomed in quiet corners. The air smelled like earth and lemon and hope. I come here when I can't breathe, he said, kneeling beside a white rose bush. They don't ask questions. They just grow. Doris knelt beside him. She touched a soft petal with 2 fingers. I've never seen roses like these. I planted them, he said softly, for someone I hadn't met yet. She looked at him, but he kept his eyes on the soil. Every visit after that, he showed her more. Not of the house, of himself. One day he showed her his library, 3 walls of books and 1 of windows. He didn't brag about first editions or rare prints. Instead, he pulled out a thin, old book of poems and read to her in a voice that trembled just slightly on the sad words. Another day, he led her to a small sunroom, where an easel stood with half-finished paintings. You paint? She asked, surprised. Only when I can't sleep. She saw the blues he used were deep and aching. She saw lonely hills, empty rooms, and once, one painting of a woman with a braid, looking out a window. The woman looked a lot like her. He didn't explain that one. He just looked away, his face quiet. She didn't push him. Instead, she stayed, again and again. Each visit, he never tried to impress her with money, No grand gestures, no gifts, just small things. Tea made just how she liked it, a note left on the piano, an apple pie he tried to bake himself, and completely ruined. They laughed that night for nearly an hour. Doris found out things she never expected, that he was afraid of people, that crowds made his chest tight, that he had once been engaged to a woman who saw only his name, not his soul, and worst of all, that he had never been kissed with love, that every touch he ever knew came with expectation or emptiness, and that he had started believing maybe love just wasn't meant for someone like him. One day they sat under the warm light of the greenhouse, and he looked at her hands as she trimmed a plant. Without a word, he gently reached forward and kissed her hand. She didn't pull away. She just looked at him. "Tell me," he asked, voice low, "what do you see when you look at me?" She didn't rush her answer. She looked right into his eyes. "Not a billionaire," she said softly, "just a broken man who wants to be loved." He didn't respond. He couldn't, because his heart had never heard anything that real before. That afternoon, he stood up suddenly and took her down a hallway she hadn't seen before. He stopped at a wooden door, old and faded. "This room stays locked," he said quietly. "But today, I want you to see it." He turned the key and stepped back. Doris stepped inside and gasped. Hundreds of letters were stacked in boxes and pinned to boards. Some were torn, some still sealed, some stained with what looked like water, or maybe tears. She walked to the desk in the corner. "Did you write all these?" she asked. He nodded, standing in the doorway, like he was afraid to come in. "Every night, for 10 years. She picked up the top one. The handwriting was careful, gentle, almost shy. It was addressed to the girl with kind eyes. Her knees went weak. She sat slowly in the old leather chair and opened the envelope. The letter was short. "Dear girl with kind eyes, I don't know who you are yet, but I hope you love the sound of rain. I hope you believe in second chances, and I hope someday you find this room." Doris didn't realize she was crying until her tears hit the paper. She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "You were waiting for me," she whispered. He didn't move, but he nodded. "And I didn't even know your name," he said. The first time it happened, Doris didn't even notice. She was too busy smiling. She had just gotten into the sleek black car Noah had sent for her, a car that always felt too expensive for someone like her. But this time, she was smiling, holding a small white box in her hands. Inside was a cupcake, a silly one with blue frosting. She had seen it in the bakery window and thought of Noah. She wanted to surprise him, but as the car rolled through town, she saw them. People, watching. Some looked curious, some looked cold, and some looked cruel. One woman nudged her friend. "That's her," she said, not even whispering. "The girl who took $1 million for one night," the friend muttered back. Doris's fingers tightened around the box. She looked down. The frosting was smudged now. That night, she said nothing to Noah. She simply handed him the cupcake and smiled like nothing happened. But it happened again and again. Whispers in the grocery store. Eyes that followed her when she walked alone. Snickers from strangers when she ordered a coffee. She didn't wear designer clothes. She didn't wear makeup every day. She was plain. Too plain, they thought, for a man like him. And worse, she had a past of struggle, of working 3 jobs, of skipping meals so Emma could eat, of never belonging to the kind of world Noah came from. They hated her for being different. They hated him for loving her. But the worst moment came on a Saturday afternoon. Doris had gone back to the bakery to buy another cupcake. A silly tradition now, one she and Noah had laughed about. She stood in line, holding her little box, waiting. The woman behind her leaned in close and said, loud enough for the whole place to hear, "Girls like you don't belong with men like him." Doris turned around slowly. The woman smiled sweetly, cruelly. "You're just a project, a phase. You think money makes you worthy?" Doris didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her throat closed. Her hands shook. She paid for the cupcake and left without looking back. She didn't cry until she got to the lake. It was the place she always went when things were too heavy, where the trees were quiet and the wind carried no judgment. She sat on the wooden bench, the box still in her lap, untouched. She stared at the water, wishing she could disappear inside it, just for a little while. Then she heard footsteps, software, familiar. Noah. He said nothing at first. He just sat beside her. After a while, she whispered, "They're right." He turned to her, eyebrows tight. "Who?" "Everyone," she said. "I'm not strong enough for this. Not strong enough to walk past eyes that hate me. Not brave enough to pretend it doesn't hurt. I'm not like you." Noah was quiet. Then slowly, he kneeled in front of her. He took her hands gently but firmly. "No," he said. "You're not like me. You're stronger." She shook her head. "You are," he said again, more fiercely. "You didn't grow up with bodyguards and locked gates. You faced the world with nothing and stayed kind. You took care of Emma. You worked yourself until you broke, and you still smile." Doris looked away, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm tired, Noah." "I know," he said softly. "Then let me be your strength." She met his gaze and saw something raw there. Not pity, respect, love. "You're not less than anyone," he said, voice steady. "You're more, because you stayed kind in a cruel world. You loved when no one taught you how." Her hands trembled in his. And then, Noah said the words that broke the last wall in her heart. "You took 1 million for one night, Doris, but you gave me something priceless. Hope. Now let me give you forever." She gasped. She hadn't expected that. Not now, not after all the judgment and hate. But he wasn't finished. He pulled a tiny wrinkled note from his pocket. It wasn't a ring box. It was a letter. One of the many he had written, long before she ever walked into his life. He opened it. It read, "Dear girl with kind eyes, if I ever meet you, I promise not to let you go. Even if the world tells me I should. Even if they say you're not enough. Because to me, you are the world." Doris burst into tears. She leaned forward and held him close, tighter than ever before. That night, they didn't speak again. They just stayed there. A girl the world judged. A man who once had everything but love. And the lake beside them, silent like it understood. It was not a wedding of glittering diamonds or flashing lights. There were no reporters, no cameras, no press begging for a headline. No loud music, no stage. Just them. Noah Henry and Doris John, and the garden, blooming with white roses and wild violets. It was Noah's mother's garden. She had planted those roses before she passed, hoping one day her son would find someone who could love him without fear, without condition. He did, and her garden now carried that promise. Guests walked in quietly, dressed in soft pastels and calm expressions. Many of them had whispered cruel things once, but now they were silent, because love stood in front of them. Real, unshakable. The aisle was simple, wooden chairs, a path lined with petals, and at the end, a wooden arch Noah had built with his own hands. He wanted everything about that day to be from his heart. Emma walked first, the little girl who once lay sick in a cold hospital bed. Now she smiled, glowing in a sky-blue dress, her curls bouncing with every step. She carried a basket of white petals and tossed them like snowflakes. Everyone stood. Then came Doris. No diamond crown, no silk train, just a soft cream dress, a ribbon in her hair, and the kindest eyes anyone had ever seen. Noah couldn't breathe when he saw her. He had imagined this moment 100 times in the letters he wrote, but none of those dreams compared to this. His bride, walking toward him, with no fear, no doubt, only love. She held a single white rose, the one from their first night, which he had dried and kept between the pages of his journal. And when she reached him, she smiled with trembling lips. "You came," he whispered. "Always," she whispered back. The ceremony began, but it was more than words and vows. It was a moment that felt like the sky paused to listen. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The man who had everything but love, and the woman who had nothing but love to give. They stood before the world, and they chose each other. Noah reached into his pocket, not for a ring, but for a small folded letter. It was the first letter he ever wrote to the girl with kind eyes. He read it aloud. If I ever find you, I won't ask where you've been. I'll just thank the stars that you found me. Doris cried. Tears ran down her face like soft rain. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You made me believe love doesn't come with a price, that I could be loved without pretending, without changing, just me. He took her hands, and with the sunlight on their shoulders, they exchanged rings. Simple, gold, nothing flashy, but full of meaning. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Noah didn't rush. He leaned in slowly, held her face gently, and kissed her like it was their first breath. The garden burst into applause, not for the glamour, but for the truth, and for a love that had proven itself louder than hate. That night they danced under fairy lights, just the two of them. No first-class guests, no socialites, no diamonds, only friends, only love. Later that week they made an announcement, not to the world, but to the hearts they hoped to help. They had opened a foundation. The first night, its mission? To give children without voices a place to be heard, to provide shelter, food, education, and hope. They poured their love into it. Every dollar from that 1 million night used to build the first center in the city. And when they held the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Emma stood beside them, healthy, strong, smiling. A reporter tried to sneak a photo. Noah politely sent him away. This story, he said, doesn't need headlines. It needs heart. The foundation grew, one city, then two, and everywhere it reached, people heard whispers, not of shame, but of kindness, of a woman who took a chance, of a man who chose love over pride, and of a night that changed two lives, and then changed many more. In the mansion, now filled with laughter and warmth, Doris sometimes looked at Noah while he worked in the garden. She'd smile and whisper to herself, it was never about the million. It was about being seen and seeing someone, truly. And every year on their anniversary, they visited that same bench by the lake. No words, just hands held tight. Because some love stories don't need to be loud. They just need to be real. Love isn't bought, it's found, even in the most unexpected places. And when the world judges based on color, money, or past, true love breaks all those walls.